Raise some
Cain. You gotta raise some Cain. In the heartland where the faith runs strong, we've seen the shadows growing long. Watch those around us be deceived. Yeah, the fight is at our doors, no matter who we believe. Corruption, lawless day and night, we'll speak the truth into the light. We'll bring the battle, heed the call, watch the whole thing fall. We gotta raise some Cain, show the lies, break some chains and make things right. Feel the power, be the change, time is now. We gotta raise some Cain.
Welcome to another exciting episode of the Raising Cain Show. Today, we are thrilled to delve into the fascinating history of one of the world's most iconic artifacts, the Rosetta Stone. Our guest is none other than Dr. Joel A. Freeman, a renowned historian, expert on the Rosetta Stone, and the founder and CEO of the Freeman Institute. Dr. Freeman takes us on an unforgettable journey into the heart of ancient Egypt, unlocking the secrets of a civilization that spanned millennia. With a lifetime of collecting and research, Dr. Freeman's unique insights and discoveries about the Rosetta Stone and ancient Egyptian history are unparalleled. From his travels to the West Bank of the Nile to his work deciphering the mysteries of hieroglyphics, Dr. Freeman has truly seen history come alive. So join us as we uncover the past, one discovery at a time, and explore the incredible impact of the Rosetta Stone on our understanding of Egypt's ancient culture. Get ready to embark on a history lesson, folks, like none other. So, Dr. Freeman, thank you so much for joining the show tonight, and I'm very excited to have you on and be able to talk about something different than what I normally cover, but it's something that is very fascinating to me, and so I think it'll be fascinating to our folks that are watching us tonight.
I've been looking forward to this. I looked up a little bit about you and what you're all about, and our little time to conversation before this. Really appreciate you, and let's do it.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess what I want to start with is, can you tell us how your journey into the world of Egyptian history began? Because I think that's a question a lot of people, maybe don't understand how people even get into this field or what drove you into this, but let's start there. I think that's a good place to start.
That's a great question. I grew up in Alberta, Canada. Left home when I was 17. You start hitchhiking all around North America, about 5,000 or 6,000 miles in this thumb right here. A long-haired hippie, dope-smoking fool. And then I had a conversion experience in September 10th, 1972. My whole life just turned around dramatically. And 180 degrees. And if there's any more degrees, it probably could add a few more in there. But and then what happened is about 7 years later, I became one of the first chaplains in the history of the NBA for the Washington Bullets Wizards. But in that time period between my conversion experience to the Jesus of the Bible and working with the Wizards, I had about a year in or after my conversion, I began to see a lot of hypocrisy, not only in others, but also in myself. And I just began to kind of back away and just say, yeah, I don't know if this whole Jesus thing is real. And that's when I really began to study and started looking at internal, external evidences of the scriptures, looking at archaeology, looking at mathematics and science, biology, all kinds of different disciplines. And as I was uncovering the whole elements, all the elements around the spade of archaeology, I kept bumping into the Rosetta Stone as a key element that changed the game. Because prior to the Rosetta Stone was unearthed on the west bank of the Nile in 1799. And prior to that, what happened is that wealthy men from Europe would go to Palestine, in the area. They'd go to Egypt. They go to these different places and bring dynamite and pickaxes and shovels and blow stuff up and come back maybe from Egypt with a mummy. And then on a Friday evening, they'd have a mummy unwrapping party. And so then we fast forward from 1799, 1822 is when the code was cracked to hieroglyphics. And so what happened was, in the meantime, became like an international treasure hunt. We had people from Germany and Italy and Sweden, Johann Acherblad. We had Thomas Young from Great Britain and others in France, Dessaussay and Jean Champollion and many others in France. And it just became this whole thing. I mean, when they uncovered it, and I have this little, this is a depiction of the Rosetta Stone. So at the very top here, we have the hieroglyphics. In the middle part, we have the demotic script, and what some call, we get the word democracy from it, the Greek word demos, just like the Latin Vulgate comes from the word vulgar and common. Common people use this, but it's the similar language to hieroglyphics. It's just the hieratic cursive form of hieroglyphics. And then we have the Greek. The Greek was, of course, Alexander the Great conquered Egypt, and it became a situation where it became the language of the realm. So even in the languages, the top part was reaching the priestly class. And there is like the rings on a tree. The closer you get to the center, it's the esoteric group of people and knowledge and information, and they weren't sharing that with anyone else. And so when the last person died, knowing hieroglyphics, the language died with that person. The middle part was reaching the masses, and then the bottom part was reaching the government class and also the entrepreneurs, the business class. So even in the structure of the language, they were reaching out in 196 BC to all these different types or layers of peoples throughout that region of the world. And there's nothing really stellar written on it. It's just basically the priests in Lycopolis, because you have what's known as Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt. So let's say this represents Egypt. The upper part of Egypt is called Lower, and because it's the furthest away from the origin of the Nile. The lower part of Egypt is called Upper Egypt because it's closer to the Nile. Upper part, you can even see, just like on the throne, the pharaoh would wear a crown, and if you have the brown crown, just for lack of, I don't want to go too crazy about this, but I'll just kind of keep it easy for us all to grasp and understand. But this crown here, think of mud of the Delta region in the upper part of the map of Egypt. And then the cone that comes out the top, think of sand, white sand. And so any regent, any pharaoh that had both crowns on, that person was ruling all of Egypt. But if they had only one crown on, the brown one, let's say, that regent was only ruling the upper part on a map. If you look at it, the lower, but the upper part of Egypt. And then, of course, if just the white conical crown, that would be someone ruling the lower part on the map. So basically, when they were working on this, they were trying to figure out, is hieroglyphics left to right, right to left? Is it alphabetic? Is it phonetic? Is it symbolic? And they had no AI to go to try to figure this out. It was just they're trying to understand what this was all about. And then you have the Cleopatra needle. Was brought over by a famous British gentleman, and he put it on his property. And you have these things. There's 5.5 of them in the hieroglyphics. These cartouches, kind kind of like an oval around the name, and some of the ovals are longer than others, and others are shorter. The shorter ones have the actual name of Ptolemy, Ptolem, and so you have, and then the longer ones have his title, the Grand Poobah, Ptolemy. And so Ptolemy was a young kid, probably no more than 14 years of age. His father passed away. He was thrust into becoming the leader. And what happened is, of course, he was surrounded by people that were making the actual decisions for him. But what they wanted to do is the priests, they rebelled against temple taxes in Lycopolis. And so what happened is that this basically, when they diverted the Nile, within 2 to 3 weeks, they came out with their hands up and said, we surrender. And they said, okay, what we'll do is we will relieve you of any penalty for your rebellion, and except for maybe 1 or 2 of the leaders, we'll make an example of them. But everyone else you're let go. But you have to now to come up with something where we make a decree that Ptolemy is now a deity. And so this basically is telling the story of what happened in Lycopolis, but then also says that Ptolemy, this young kid, is a deity, a god in Egypt, because there was such tension. I mean, you have Egypt got conquered after about 3,000 years, and all the dynastic periods. After the 25th dynasty, you had Shabaka, you had Pianki, you had Tarharka, who's mentioned in 2 Kings 19 and Isaiah 37. He's a biblical character. He was not a pharaoh at that moment. He was the head of the army in the biblical discourse. But what happened is that after the 25th dynasty, there was a tremendous fall. Then you had the Medes and Persians coming in, the Medo-Persian Empire. And then there was a very brief Egyptian revival where they came back into power. And then, of course, along comes Alexander the Great, conquers Egypt. And then you have the Romans. And so this was under the Hellenistic, the Ptolemaic Empire of Egypt. And so there was a lot of tension between the priestly class and the government now, the people in charge. And so they thought if they can somehow leverage this situation with the priests, their rebellion, and they could then make some kind of a deal here with them to make an honorific title of this person. So what happened is that when in 1799, you have now, you fast forward the Napoleonic Egyptian Military Campaign, where Napoleon has, things are lagging, after the French Revolution. There's a lot of challenges going on in terms of food and finances and all kinds of issues going on for that about a decade. And so it's kind of like Napoleon was going to Egypt. He probably had his own issues in terms of would it be cool to have a double crown on his head and be the Grand Poobah, the Pharaoh of Egypt. But also there's a whole tension between the British and the French. And you had India was, of course, the sun never set on the British Empire, but they had to go all the way around to India and to cut off that pass, the Suez Canal area, of course, later became Suez Canal. But that waterway, to cut that off would be a wonderful accomplishment and put the collective thumb in the British eye, the British collective eye, if you will. And so that there are some strategic issues here. So he brought, I think it was about 167 savants. I'm not sure the exact number at the moment, but all these people that were experts in hydrology, architecture, botany, and all these different disciplines, because Napoleon fancied himself as a scientific man and interested in scientific things and archaeology and things like that. Even on the ship on the way over, they first stopped off in Malta, took over Malta, and ravaged the treasury, got a lot of gold, and so they were able to have this well financed as they got to Egypt. And then, of course, the soldiers they're wearing woolen type garments, and you have if you've ever been to Egypt, it's just terrible, terribly hot.
Right. Yeah.
And so they were ill prepared on that level. But he brought all these savants. And so you have on the Nile coming into the mouth of the Mediterranean, that's a strategic spot. So Napoleon sent a group of people with Lieutenant Pierre Bouchard at the mouth of the Nile, where Rosetta was and is, for now called Fort Rashid. That was strategic militarily, that they could, if you've ever been there, I've been there, and a cannon ball could take out a ship, it's that narrow of an area. And so that way, no British vessels could come down the Nile and about 100 miles south and then do a strategic strike into Cairo against the French. Well, what happened in the meantime is they're excavating to build this fort. They happened upon this stone. It weighs 1,700 pounds, about 45 inches tall, about 30 inches wide, about 11 inches thick. And so one of the savants in the group understood Greek and read the last sentence in the Greek, which says, "The same thing shall be inscribed in all three inscriptions." And they're thinking, "Oh my goodness, this is going to be easy peasy lemon squeezy." We're just going to, we know what the Greek says. And if the same thing is in the hieroglyphics, and we're looking around Egypt and we're seeing all these obelisks and sides of temples looks like they let the kindergarten class loose. And they etched all these things in there. We have no idea what they mean. This could help unlock the secrets of ancient Egypt. And so I'll come up for air if you have any more questions. But that kind of gives a broad at
Sure.
feet.
So it basically became kind of the first key to understanding the lost language of the Egyptian priesthood, right? So let me ask you about that, because that's something I've always wondered about, is how did they lose the knowledge of their language? Like, how did that happen? Because I mean, obviously they existed for a very long time, and they had pharaohs, and and they were doing these types of hieroglyphics for a very long time. But at some point, all of that was lost. When did that loss of their language happen?
Well, it was no one knows for sure. But I know even today I was reading an article recently. They're saying that I can't remember exactly, but it was like a language is lost every 2 weeks or something like that, which sounds fantastic. It sounds ridiculous. But it's when the oldest person, the last person has knowledge of that language dies. I mean, we see, even with people coming over from Europe, and in the early 1900s, early 20th century. And many times they didn't want their children to know Italian or German or Russian or whatever the situation might be. And so they would hold back on that. And then a whole generation was growing up without understanding the language. And so there's various reasons for this. But it was after 196 BC. We know that much because this someone knew how to communicate hieroglyphics.
So the reason I was asking about all that is, I think about like in Europe, you had the Celtic people who had runes, as their language, and of course, you had the Sumerians, which had their cuneiform text. And it seems that, while those languages have become dead languages, people knew, those languages, they knew how to translate it. There were people but it's just weird. Like there must have been some event that occurred in Egypt, that outlawed it or something like that, to where, and I don't know, maybe it was the burning of the Great Library of Alexandria.
That could have fit into it. But then you have this upheaval, and as you know, probably better than most, when studying history, is that when upheaval happens, some of the intelligentsia get killed, or they put in prison, because they know that just like in enslavement here in the United States, in the South, they didn't want anyone to read, because
That's a very good point. Yeah.
if they could read, then they would have knowledge about things, and then they would rebel. And so that could be very, very much a part of that picture.
That's a fascinating concept, because I think I've had some really interesting things that I've read about, and there's some really amazing things that were discovered that indicate people in the past had far better, far more advanced technology than we gave them credit for. Like the Greeks had batteries, that were made from these big old giant pottery with that had chemical reaction batteries in them. And you had that famous water clock that was discovered in the Mediterranean, which was had very advanced precision cogs in it. And it's just like,
and how were the pyramids built? We
can't figure it out today, which that's pretty crazy to think about. And and of course the belief by most archaeologists is that the pyramids, while they're really ancient, the Sphinx is even older, and possibly from a whole nother dynasty. And so there's so much that we don't know. And I think that's what really makes, Egyptology so exciting, because here you have these megaliths that still exist, and yet we can't even figure out like how they built these things, or how they knew how to perfectly align them, so that they line up, with what is it, Orion's belt. And it's like,
oh, it's incredible. Yes,
it is incredible. And the massive scale of it all. Like I try to make something from wood, try to build a picnic table years ago, and I couldn't even get the thing to stand up. Yet they took these massive stones from miles away, had them moved there, and then built it with such precision that
each stone, most of the stones are like 2.5 tons. There's no more than a 1/1000th of an inch toleration between them.
Yeah.
And then also you have one person during the Napoleonic Egyptian Military Campaign, one of the savants, figured out the amount of stone, and he said that you could build a wall 1 foot wide, 10 feet tall, all the way around the country of France, with just the stone on the Giza Plaza of the 3 pyramids.
Yeah. And the other thing that amazes me about all of this is that Egypt obviously is, one of the more well-known ancient, civilizations, but it seems that there were civilizations all around the world, including in the Americas, that had this kind of knowledge of building pyramids and building ziggurats and, these massive structures. They had knowledge of the stars. They had knowledge of the constellations and the times and seasons. They had, technology that we probably don't even know about. I mean, there's even there's I can't remember where it is, but there's a massive wall, that was discovered not too long ago, in North America. And, of course, there's people arguing, saying, well, they think it's some sort of natural structure. I don't think so, because it looks just like some of the walls down in Peru and down in South America. But where the space between, these stones is, it's so tight, such a tight wall structure. We don't know how they did this. So it fascinates me, and I really want to understand these things, because I think there are lessons that we can learn. And if a civilization that is that advanced for that period of time can fall and become completely lost, it can happen today. Yes. And what you were just saying about how the intelligentsia, they were probably enslaved and killed. This is somebody, I can't remember who it was that I heard say this, but they said, we could have had completely, civilized, advanced technology in the past. And if there was some sort of massive worldwide cataclysmic event, it would have, made it very hard for people to survive. And the people who would have survived would not necessarily have been the smartest. It would have been the people who were used to the elements, able to hunt and fish and survive, and had ingenuity, but maybe not advanced technological knowledge, those people would have likely perished. And so it would have been the commoner, that was used to fending for themselves, that would have survived that sort of thing. And so I think about those things, and it makes me wonder, like, if there was some sort of event today, would I survive it?
Yeah, it's a very real question. That's one of the things that I'm looking at in terms of, okay, we got all this information. Let's blow the dust off it. Let's see if we can make it relevant. And so, I was able to acquire a replica of the Rosetta Stone, a face of the Rosetta Stone in 2005, and paid a king's ransom for it. But when it arrived, I thought, my goodness, what if I was able to find a stone sculptor to recreate the side and the rear of the Rosetta Stone, because that doesn't have to be as exact. And, so one-to-one facsimile, first generation. I'm never going to get any closer to the actual Rosetta Stone than this. And so what happened is I ended up launching the project at the Library of Congress in 2009. And then in 2013, I was watching a show. And by the way, my replicas, they're in, one was used in the movie Night at the Museum Part 3. They're in libraries and in museums in South Korea, Australia, Houston, all over the place. And so 2013, I saw a show on the History Channel called 101 Objects That Changed the World. They brought together, I don't know how many SMEs, subject matter experts, together, but I think they spent about a whole year. And you can imagine the debate and the arguments, because we have the wheel, all kinds of objects that have changed the world. Well, they ended up doing it in a hierarchical fashion. Number one, of course, they started with 101 and worked their way back up to number one. Number one was the Bible, in terms of an object that changed the world. Number two was it was coinage, money. Number three, Rosetta Stone. And here I am, already an aficionado about the Rosetta Stone and the history and intrigued by it. And I thought to myself, that beat out the wheel, that beat out the automobile, that beat out rocket ships. You got to be kidding. I must be missing something here. So I kind of backed up like a ratchet wrench. I did the click, click, click. And I figured, well, how can we take this story, this 23-year saga of trying to figure out cracking the code to hieroglyphics? By the way, I've done some things for NSA, National Security Agency. I launched, when they launched the language wars with the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, where they play, like Jeopardy and Farsi and Russian and Arabic, some of the finest linguists in the world. And I've been at the L3 building, the auditorium all full of cryptologists, and they're all quivering with excitement. They can't wait to come up and caress the Rosetta Stone face. And, just because that's the granddaddy of code cracking,
Right.
So what happened is I began to think, what if we take this ancient artifact and transform it, turn it into a modern metaphor for problem solving and critical thinking? And what the catalyst behind that was, we had the Industrial Revolution, where they took steam. They were able to compress steam and change the skylines of cities around the world. They're able to change the modes of transportation, moving people from point A to point B in fantastic ways. And of course, you had on the flip side of that, you have child labor issues, you have pollution, all kinds of stuff coming out. But net, an incredible revolution.
Yeah.
Now today we're dealing with three revolutions, a triple revolution, or we're dealing with an artificial intelligence. We're dealing, number two, with spatial computing, putting on the goggles and now you're walking around Berlin, or something like that, or out in outer space. Number three, quantum computing. Now, any one of those three is a game changer, not unlike the Industrial Revolution. And so I began to think,
Yeah,
okay,
it's gonna change, man. It's gonna change the way that we as human beings interact with the world and with
yes,
each other.
yes,
Or yeah, and in some ways, it's already I'm already seeing it happen. People have no idea just how integrated AI is into everything that we do.
everything.
Anything in the digital world is already using AI,
It's already
and
there.
and it is growing so fast and it's advancing so quickly. In fact, we're outpacing, I think, our ability. We're going to outpace with AI the ability to provide enough power to generate, to run it. And
Mhm.
that is like one of the big things that we're going to
It's
have to
true.
overcome is even with totally opening up the floodgates of hydrocarbon based fuel to generate electricity. We're going to need to go to nuclear. We're going to need to find alternative ways that are powerful enough to generate the electricity that's going to be needed for advanced AI, which will solve major problems that we've had that we've been stumped with, discoveries in medicine and things like that.
Yes. Yeah, just to kind of hitchhike off that is that what I was thinking is that is I find that most people just have their arm up over their head and just saying, I don't know what's happening. It's happening. I can't do anything about it. So I
Hmm.
thought, what if we have a voice that is full of gee whiz, very cool technology that invites people to use their God-given brain first and during the use of technology. But using I felt it was important to have an epic drama, a story around it. And the Rosetta Stone that hardly anyone knows about, really. I mean, you have the language software company, and you have the Rosetta space project for the European Space Agency. You have Rosetta Genomics. You have all these different folks that are using the term, and rightfully so. But how can we tell this story so that a kid and a 93-year-old can, and everyone in between, 100 years old, can grasp it and then extrapolate, glean some ideas on how to live in this crazy world? And so what I did was I developing a 5,000 square foot traveling exhibit that will travel all around North America. It'll have 4 zones. The first zone will be all about the history, where you have Napoleon and war and all the different elements. That by itself could be the whole exhibit. The second zone will be about code cracking. We have the Enigma. We have the Cyrillic codes. We have a third base coach in baseball going all like this, run, dive,
Right, right.
bunt, whatever it is, steal. And then you have the Navajo code talkers.
Mm.
We have the Native American Indian smoke signals. Tatanka's coming, the buffalo's coming. We don't want the other tribal system to know, and so they encode it so that we get the first crack at the buffalo. And so the third zone will be about language and culture. And I'm going to have the Museum of the Bible involved in this because
Oh,
there's
wow.
well over 100 idiomatic expressions from the King Jimmy version that we take for granted, and just to show how the Bible impacted culture and so on. The fourth
Mhm.
zone, what I've done is I've taken the word Rosetta. So you have this is back. I don't know if it comes across right, but I'm looking
Yeah,
at it backwards. But ROSETTA 7. I've developed 7 steps to solve pretty much any problem within about 10 categories of problems. We have problems that are moral, ethical problems. We have interpersonal problems, race relation problems. We have interpersonal problems, all mechanical, technical problems. And so I've developed a schema, a process, for instance, like the R would stand for, first you got to recognize there's a problem. But we also have to recognize the intensity of the problem. So I've developed an acronym called FIRE maps, where these are the categories of problems, but also is it a campfire problem? Is it a bonfire problem? Or is it a wildfire problem?
Mm.
And if it's a wildfire problem, all heads on swivel. We need to get accounting, legal, everybody involved in this. Whatever you've got, put it on this. You got to put it on the side. We got to totally focus. And then also emotional intelligence, because just like when I was a young kid, I became a certified lifeguard. And the thing they taught you is if you're going out to a drowning person, if you go straight to them, you are going to, they're going to pull you down with them. You got to stiff arm them to get behind, and then you can bring them to safety. And the same holds true with emotional intelligence. A person can have an answer, just like my wife, and perhaps if you're married, your wife, where you have a situation, my wife has a problem and all she wants is a hug. She doesn't want me to solve it. And maybe 48 hours later, I can say, honey, I was thinking about this, and is it a good time to talk about this? Maybe come up with some solutions. And so what we want to do in the
there's a great video, by the way, on that. If folks, if you're listening, go check out this video called "It's Not About the Nail." After our show, you will laugh your head off.
I've seen it.
You know what I'm talking about.
I know it.
It's
only about 2 to 3 minutes.
Example of what you just described.
Oh, yes. So basically, what the fourth zone, we're going to show, for instance, I ended up, just about 6 years ago, started working on a Black history curriculum, an inclusive account of American history called Black History 365, working with Dr. Walter Milton. And now we're down to over 500 school districts. And it's now a solution to the education gap in America in this particular area of Black history. And that's kind of the way I'm wired is in this fourth zone, is to show how solutions have been come about and show the iterative process. It's very difficult. It is mind-numbing. There's a lot of people around a person trying to solve a problem saying it can't be done, and you're an idiot. Why are you doing this? And then obtaining information, specifying goals. Is the goal to be famous, or is the goal to be rich? To me, those are very shallow reasons, but they motivate people. But it's important to understand the why, because once a person has their why, any how, any when, any who, any what, anywhere that comes against their why, they can handle it, because they've specified their goals internally. And then of course, it's evaluating options, testing solutions, taking action, assessing results. That's the Rosetta process. And then once the template is done for North America, these will travel for 7 years, 5 months at each venue. Then we're going to create two more for China, one for Southeast Asia, one for Europe, and then one that'll travel to various cities that aren't impacted by the other orbits, like Sydney, Moscow, Joburg, Tel Aviv, places like that. And then at the end of 7 years, all 6 will be donated to a different part of the world.
That's great.
That's
something that builds relationships. It brings people together.
Yes.
There's little that anybody can, it's an apolitical thing. And it's something that it's important to understanding history. Before I want to continue on this discussion, but I do got to run a commercial break. So we're going to do that real quick, and then we will be right back after a short break, folks. So stay with us.
Welcome to Shop with America, where the emphasis is on America. Our movement is to switch away from your shopping with the big box stores and the mega corporations back to supporting family-owned, made in America. We've been giving these big box stores our money every day for years. But what's happened is they've forced many small businesses to shut down. We call this the illusion of choice. We see all these products in these stores, but in reality, it's only a few companies that control it all. There are thousands of lawsuits for health damage because they put profit over our people. But there is another choice. We found a better way. There's a family-owned American factory with product integrity and have always done things the right way for the right reasons. And this company outperforms the big box stores. That's due to their month-to-month shopping club. They make everyday consumer products that we all use and buy again and again, like toothpaste, shampoo, coffee, and organic beef. Go to shopwithamerica.us today.
Welcome back to the Raising Cain Show. We've been talking with Dr. Joel Freeman about the Rosetta Stone and its significance in, just in everything, and how we have advanced as a human race. So right before we went to the break, you were talking about what you're planning on doing in spreading this around the world and being able to educate people. Tell me, with the work that you've been doing and the things that you've been learning from Egypt, have there been other Have there been other Rosetta-like stones or things like that that have been found in other places that have helped us unlock additional things? Because I imagine the Rosetta Stone, certainly didn't have like every single hieroglyph on it, right?
No. Yeah, it's I really have more hyper focused on the Rosetta Stone. There are other stones that have done this, and I know the Behiston Rock really has helped a lot. and there's other types of things. I think there's one right now that is waiting to be cracked, a code to a language, and I can't remember all the details. Someone was telling me about this recently, but yeah, it's something that I think that is important for people to grasp about the Rosetta Stone, is the process that it took to bring this about, and that's the thing that I think can be lost. Where let's say a 10th grade kid, if we had a room of 100 kids in 10th grade, and they took truth serum, I think every one of them would say, yes, I have used ChatGPT to help write a paper. And to me, that is it creates kind of a poser mentality. I wrote that book, I wrote that song, I wrote this, I wrote that. No, it's ChatGPT that did it. And so what I want to do, it can't force anybody to do anything, but to help people to understand that technology is wonderful, but it also can be as addictive as crack cocaine. And it can. I don't know if you've ever seen a scan of a brain that is atrophied. It's a pretty sight. And it's the same thing like muscles. The Cleveland Clinic says that if we have no resistance in our muscles for 2 to 3 weeks, their muscles atrophy. That's why in the space station they have to have resistance exercises. And so I think it's important to help this generation and those of us who are older too, who get as addicted on cell phones and things like that and technology, to just say, I am going to use my God-given brain first. And that way, the poser mentality and all these other things that gnaw away at a person's integrity and conscience. I think that I just think it's important to have something that has kind of like a gee whiz, exciting. Hey, you got to see this. This is blowing my mind. That's just. We have by the way, a creature called the Rosetta clone, who is a international rock star, a celebrity impersonator. He sings songs like "A Clone Again," "Naturally," and "Tears of a Clone," and "One is the cloneliest number you ever heard." And so we're trying to do something that will be so engaging that when kids are experiencing it, either on the metaverse or in real time in the real space, that they will be texting their friends saying, "You got to see this. You got to see this." And that's the kind of emotion and passion we want to elicit from this.
In my world of cybersecurity, I've been doing it for about 27 years, and I went through NSA's cyber core training, and they start by, no matter where you're at, no matter what your background is, they don't care. They make everybody go through fundamentals, a networking fundamentals course, and then you go. They start you off before they ever let you even touch any of these, exploitation tools like Kali Linux or things like that. They start you off actually building from the scratch, from the command line, your own socket, which is basically the connection point between one computer and another. And so they take you through it step by step, because now in the real world of fighting, hackers, you don't want to be dependent, or you don't want to be relying just on that kind of, level of understanding, because you need tools that will give you an advantage that can help you speed up the process. But without understanding the fundamentals, without understanding, how things come together, then you don't really know how to investigate properly.
That's right.
Because you need to have that foundation in order to build upon. And so I think that's what it sounds like you're talking about in regards to, what needs to be taught to kids and what they need to understand. Technology is a great thing. AI, I think, is a wonderful thing. But if you utilize AI as a substitute for your own brain, then before you know it, you're going to be a slave to it.
That's right.
the same with media. If we allow media to feed us everything that we know about what's going on with the world, then we only know what we're being fed. And if the wrong person gets control of that and they start feeding us, propaganda, before you know it, we're going to be a slave to that mentality instead of losing our critical thinking, or using our critical thinking and our ability to investigate, our ability to test things and to know the truth, from a lie. And that's what I think.
That pre-chewed information.
Yes, absolutely. Somebody posted something here up in the chat. I want to bring up their comment because I thought this was interesting. So I have no idea how I will live in this new super AI world. I truly struggle with tech, and because of MS, barely know how to use my phone. So there was something that I remember learning about when I was in college, and they talked about it. They call it cyberphobia. And there's a real thing where people become, they become so afraid of technology. They think, oh, there's no way I could understand this or know this. And so they just kind of shun it. It's like a modern day version of a Luddite, I guess. Now, so I think it's important that we understand the advancements and the things that, that are coming so that we can utilize it. But we've got to understand that those things, like you were saying, if I don't go out and exercise, like, God designed me to get physical exercise through labor, through working, through doing things. And if I sit at a desk all day and I never go out and walk and I never go out and exercise, I'm going to atrophy in my physical body. It's going to lead to, health problems and things like that. If I don't use my brain and I don't use certain parts of my brain, those parts that actually require me, to learn things like language and learn things like, mathematics and computing and, all of those things, it leads to atrophying, of our brain as well, because those neurons die after a while, and it will reshape our brain into something that doesn't utilize all that excess neurons. And I do think that is a problem that we have to face as a world. What do you think is the greatest benefit that, some of these discoveries and things that you've worked on in Egypt, out of all of the things that you've worked on, what do you think is probably the most profound lesson or discovery from your work with the Rosetta Stone and ancient Egyptian history?
Well, as a man of faith, I think that probably the greatest thing is the spate of archaeology, the soft science discipline of archaeology emerged, because once they realized what was being communicated in hieroglyphics, it then unlocked the secrets of ancient Egypt. And then they just said, time out, whatever you used to say time out, they just said, we need to have something that we codify, and we have a certain approach. It's called controlled demolition. A hill, a tell, you drill down, you go down 10 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet, you pull up pieces of pottery, you date the strata, where it is, and then you attack the hill with a toothbrush and a paintbrush and a little trowel, and layer by layer, you begin to unlock the secrets of that. So language, in my opinion, is very important. They say that they can determine how many prisons to build in a region by the literacy rate at second, third grade. And so wow. Illiteracy is a ticket to prison. And so I think that in a similar way, if when a person becomes literate, they can now read a menu, and they're not dependent on someone else to say, well, that's potato, that's beans, that's corn, or drive a car. Well, there's an exit. What does that say? Literacy opens up doors. And the same way with ancient peoples, understanding the language opens up the understanding. Oh, they paid women for work. Here's a receipt. Wow, that was an advanced civilization. And so it becomes a situation where language is so important. Then once archaeology began to emerge, then we have biblical archaeology. And I just love, I've led well over 25 educational tours to Israel and to Greece. I've hiked all throughout the Qumran caves. I've
Oh, wow.
been to, of course, the place where the Rosetta Stone was unearthed on the west bank of the Nile. I've traveled over 55 countries. I think it's now close to 60 now, countries around the world. And a lot of my focus has been, okay, here's a something in the scriptures. Can I go to that site and actually drink in the atmosphere? It's kind of like when we did a film about a film about Black history called Return to Glory. We hired the Frederick Douglass house in Southeast DC for the whole day. And I actually went upstairs, didn't have everyone around me. I probably shouldn't be saying this in public, but I laid on Frederick Douglass's bed. And I looked out the window and I thought, oh, this is the view that Frederick Douglass had when he woke up in the morning. And I went to his library and saw his Bible and the books. It was all pretty much in the same condition that he left it. His, whatever he had was there. And in the same way, I think that by language helps to open up the doorways for us to understand things. And then when we get into the biblical realm, the spiritual realm, we can see that the Bible we have, just the Qumran caves, the Dead Sea Scrolls, we now know for sure that the disciples could not have massaged the text because the Dead Sea Scrolls are dated 90 to 100 years before the time of Christ. And it's all the Old Testament prophecies, over 300 messianic prophecies, very specific. The odds of them being fulfilled are infinitesimal. And all the different things put together, out of all the continents, it's Asia. Out of all the countries, it's Israel. Out of all the communities, it's Bethlehem. And out of all the times, it's before. It had to be during this period of time. All brought in the Old Testament, brought to light in the coming of the Messiah. And so we now, it's like if I were to say, there's a guy by the name of Robert Anderson, well, could be anybody, Then I say he's in Chicago. He's in, lives on Maple Avenue. His last four digits are 1257 of his Social Security. Every new piece of information I give about this Robert Anderson, it narrows it down to only one person. And so that's where the spade of archaeology that came out, the catalyst was the Rosetta Stone, the catalyst for all this that helped to bring it all together. That to me is probably one of the greatest gifts of the Rosetta Stone.
Yeah. Wow. So what do you think in terms of, more recent archaeology? Are there any new and interesting discoveries that have been recently found that you're aware of?
A dear friend of mine is Eli Shkron, who was he was the chief archaeologist of the city of David, Mount Zion in Israel, in Jerusalem, for 20 years. He found a bell on the bottom of the priestly garment, and you see a picture of him holding it in his grubby hands. It just dirty. He pulled it out of the ground and took a picture of it. You can see, and some other things, some coins that he has helped to bring together. In Egypt, of course, we have Zahi Hawass, who always seems to be at the very center of all the discoveries. I know the new Grand Egyptian Museum is I think it's going to, this July is going to be available. By the way, we have on our advisory board, we have a gentleman, Mustafa Muhammad, who is one of the chief curators of the Grand Egyptian Museum, Smokey Robinson, Ben Carson, Kathy Hughes, and a bunch of other folks on our advisory board. The leading expert in archaeological geology, James Harrell, is on our advisory board, and others, so that we have all these disciplines coming together so that we everything is proof. We prove everything. And we have the body of knowledge and information surrounding us so that we're making sure that everything is ethical, it's credible, and it's actionable.
Man, that's so important. My wife and I, a few years back, we read a book. I think it was called the Post-Columbian Revolution, but it's about everything that happened after Columbus discovered, the Americas, and particularly the trade that took place.
Mhm.
And it was so fascinating because there were things like that I never would have understood or known had I not read this book. Things like, you think about tomatoes, and when you think about tomatoes, what country first comes to mind? Italy, right?
Italy, yes, yeah, pizza.
Pre-Columbian Revolution, there were no tomatoes in Italy. In fact,
Yes,
tomatoes
yeah.
were brought from Peru, and most tomatoes varieties are poisonous, but they were edible tomatoes in Peru, and they brought them to Italy. You think about like chili peppers, and where do you think? South America, but actually they came from Asia, and they were brought there after the Columbian Revolution. Same thing with rice. You might think China, but there was no rice in China prior to the Columbian Revolution. It came from the Philippines after they had a sweet potato famine. And so these things, they may seem minor, but they demonstrate how when we don't know history, we can easily take things for granted and just believe, even when you think about like, the origin of, Americas, and this might be a little controversial, but you have a lot of people that will say, well, the Caucasians, came here and conquered the land and took it away from the Indians. Yeah, but they came here and conquered the land, took it away from people who were here before as well. And in fact, they have found
the story of history.
That's right. That's right. So it's important to understand history. We think about like what's going on right now in Israel, and about the just the attacks that have been on the people of Israel, and trying to deny them their claim to the land of Israel, when in fact archaeology proves beyond any shadow of a doubt that they did historically have possession of that land. And so it's interesting, but again, they came in and conquered the people that were there before as well. So knowing that and understanding that history, it plays an important part of our understanding of the world and how it works. And I think it's fascinating. So I really appreciate you coming on. I've got to run one more commercial, and then when I come back, we'll wrap things up. But
I'd like to talk about this when we come back too, the Jack Johnson.
Definitely. We will do that. So let me run this commercial real quick, and we will be right back after a short break. And just so I can skip with a lot of the stuff that I usually say, at the bottom, the two commercials I'm going to run back to back, you can find more information at the two websites that are on there scrolling across the bottom. So I'll run those right now.
It says, I woke up this morning and looked out the door to a country I don't recognize. They put masks on our face to hide our pain, and there's no fire in most people's eyes. And it's still true today. It's still true today that they've tried to destroy the American spirit. And in some instances, they've done a dadgum good job. But in other instances, they have lit an inferno in some people. And we right now are gathering some of those people that are on freaking fire to save this country.
Increasing expenses have caused us all a lot of pressure these days, and it's affecting even the wealthiest of people. Most have lost their sense of security, stability, and even hope for a strong financial future. The game plan of everyone in your cell phone has likely been disrupted or even hardcore stopped, and most are looking for a creative solution to regain financial momentum. Oftentimes, life's best solutions are the simplest, But first, a question. What is something most people think they should own but don't? Crypto, fine art, real estate? Nope. We are talking about real money. The kind kings and queens fought for and large institutions today buy in mass. We're talking about gold and silver, assets that provide confidence in tough financial situations. So the question is, do you own any? If you don't, you're not alone. Most people aren't maximizing the power of precious metals because it's just been too complicated. And even though they see advertisements about gold and silver daily, they don't really know who to trust. That is, until now. The bottom line is that buying gold and silver doesn't have to be complicated or scary. There's a simple, better way to accumulate assets and create financial peace, headache-free. And this very minute, a new community of average people are seeing above average results to the tune of tens of millions in assets over the last few years. This system is tested, it's simple, and it's not an experiment. To date, it's helped more than 80,000 people bring hope back into their lives. It's invitation only, and right now, this new community has accepted a challenge to give away as much free gold this year as possible. Curious? Learn how to get your free gold today. Check out the next step to get the details.
Welcome back to the Raising Cain Show, and we're here talking with Dr. Joel Freeman. We've been discussing the Rosetta Stone and its importance, and the important role that it's played in human history, but also you've been breaking down that it's not just the stone itself, but it's also about the process of understanding language, the process of basically decoding it, that has been one of the most valuable lessons learned from it. So before we went to break, I wanted to ask you about that. You've talked about what you're doing and what your plans are in the future to basically spread this knowledge around, the world, which I think is great. Where are you at with that process right now, and what is your timetable that you're looking at to be able to do that?
Well, I have brought this forward as far as I can on my own funds. I funded everything it is thus far. And so now we're in a mode raising 10 million for North American and then another 20 million for the global footprint. And we have some very interested people looking at this. And one of the things that I'm doing is I've just finished a booklet about Jack Johnson, the boxer, called Jack Johnson Speaks. I own in my collection a record from 1910, where 20 days after the fight of the century in Reno, Nevada, Jack went into New York and he shared his thoughts and feelings. He's probably the first professional athlete to do this, to have his voice recorded. Oh, and wow. I own the only record where he's describing the 5th to the 15th rounds. And so what I've done is I've taken it down to 13 audio segments. We ran it through AI. We're able to bring forward some of the words that were unintelligible. We reduced the hiss and the pop, and now we're sharing this with the world. And so through QR codes, people are now able to hear his voice. There's a blues song that I produced. And then also I've taken out of what he said, I've developed a 10-step war strategy that he used before and during the fight to win the fight of the century. And imagine it's 1910 and they're calling it the fight of the century. Wow. Only a decade in, and they call it the fight of the century. And it has it's aged well. It was and is the fight of the century.
So where can people find this book? Is it on Amazon, or is there a website they can go to get it?
It is on Amazon, on eBay, but it's if they go to jackjohnsonspeaks.com, jackjohnsonspeaks.com, that gives a landing page that explains the whole thing. And then if they're in US, there's the physical booklet. Out of US, we have an online delivery system for the material, and there's a lot of bonus material on there. And then I have other things like Hurricane Bigotry, a song that I wrote, and different things that have done, that help, are all the funds will go into the foundation. They go directly into it.
That's great. Hey, well, maybe maybe if the president is listening, we can get some of the those funds that were clawed back to from some of these ridiculous things and use it towards actually helping to educate our own children and our own people, because I think a lot of the important things that need to be taught, especially these types of things about history that have completely changed, have completely advanced the human race culturally and technologically. I think it's important for us to know those things and be able to share that history. And what better way to do that than in a very tangible, physical way, where kids can interact with and learn this process of decoding and how important it was. I think that would be great. So that's awesome. I always give my guest on the show the last and final say. So we've talked about a lot of things, and people have short attention spans. So especially due to all the technology today, right? We're talking about that. So if there's one thing that you want people to take away from our conversation today, what would that be?
I would just say, don't shrink away from the hard work involved in solving problems, and to we're planning to do a K2, 3, 5, 6, 8, 9, 12 college curriculum for this, but I just want to help people to be a solutionist. So when they're having lunch somewhere and someone next to them is moaning and complaining about something, they just say, "Wait, you're lucky, you're fortunate, you're blessed, you're sitting next to a solutionist." So I want to bring the word solutionist to the forefront, so that people begin to think this way about everything in their lives, and not to be weird about it, to have emotional intelligence about it, but to just be thinking about problem solving. Because if you're in business because you're solving problems. When you cease solving problems, then you'll be out of business. If you're big and you solve problems, it might take a year for the entropy, for everything to fall apart. But even entertainment, if you're a filmmaker, musician, play basketball, you're solving a problem. You're giving people an escape for 2 hours, and to kind of go into something else and to get away from their issues. So I want to bring back this whole idea, or help to bring back this whole idea of problems. Oh, you got a problem? Oh, come. If it's appropriate, can I give you a hug? Because you are, if someone has a problem in a job, in a situation like that, you're my job security. If you got a problem, I have a job, because I'm here to help solve it.
Yeah, that is the basis of customer service, and it's something that that everyone that is working on a job site, working on a contract, or working for an employer, you got to know who your customer is, and you got to make sure that you're solving their problems, and that you are valuable to them. Know your value.
Yes.
That's very important. Well, thank you, Dr. Freeman, for sharing with us tonight. And I always like to close in prayer, because I recognize that we have our part to do, but we also need that hand of God. Absolutely. and His help in achieving these goals. So I want to just pray for you. Heavenly Father, Lord, I thank you for Dr. Freeman. I thank you for the work that he has worked on, and his desire to solve problems and to help others learn to solve problems. I pray, Lord, that you would bless his work, that you would help them to obtain and raise the money that is needed for the project that they want to do. And I pray that you would give them great success. I also, Lord, pray that you would raise up in this generation, Lord, that you really truly would bring about a golden age of knowledge and education and wisdom that we have not seen in our lifetime. I pray that this would be a new era of expanding our knowledge and critical thinking, and expanding our understanding of the past and of history, so that as we make decisions moving forward, we can do it wisely and leave behind a legacy for future generations. We thank you, Lord, for blessing us and being born in this nation with great opportunity. And we pray that you would continue to bless our nation and help us to be able to be a blessing to others. We ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you so much, Nate.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Dr. Freeman, where can people find you and connect? Reach out to you. Are you on social media?
Oh yes, LinkedIn, Facebook, Joel A. Freeman, and then also I have a website, joelspeaksrealgood.com, and then also if they are interested in the Rosetta Project, rosettacrazy.com, and of course jackjohnsonspeaks.com. Any one of those, you can ultimately find me.
That's great. Well, folks, I want to thank you for joining us tonight. And I want to thank you for, hearing us and learning something new. So remember, you can follow me at the Raising Cain Show. And you can also find me on Rumble at the Patriot's Prayer. That is where we're running this on Rumble. But you can also find that directly on our website, theraisingcainshow.com. And you can follow me at Nate Cain for WV on pretty much all social media. So I'm on X and, Getter, Gab, True Social, you name it, Facebook. I'm on it all. So thank you again for joining us. And remember to stay interested in discovering and make sure that you are out there and using your critical thinking and using your brain to try to unlock the mysteries of life. That is one of the most exciting things, I think, in our lives, is trying to understand the mysteries. So with that, God bless you, and God bless all those that are listening, and God bless America. Have a good night.
Raise some Cain. You gotta raise some Cain. In the heartland where the faith runs strong, we've seen the shadows growing long. Watch those around us be deceived. Yeah, the fight is at our doors, no matter who we believe. Corruption, lawless day and night, we'll speak the truth into the light. We'll bring the battle, heed the call, watch the whole thing fall. We gotta raise some Cain, show the lies, break some chains and make things right. Feel the power, be the change, time is now. We gotta raise some Cain.